Good day, everyone. Welcome back to another 10-minute sales multiplier. I'm your host, Shawn Casemore, joining you each and every Monday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for another strategy to help you multiply your sales. Today, I want to talk about nurturing your prospects. Now, depending on what you sell, the nurture process may differ in duration, meaning nurture on a very transactional sale might only be a few months. Whereas a more complex sale, it might be a few years in some situations. But here's what I want to suggest, that just because you're reaching out to prospects, just because you meet them at an event, maybe you find their list on a name, you reach out to them cold, maybe you have automation reaching out to them, does not mean that they're ready to buy at the very moment that you reach out or at the very moment that you start to build a trusted relationship. There can be many things, obviously, that can happen. Maybe they've got some budget constraints, meaning they can't make the investment until a certain time of the year when they enter a new budget. Maybe there's a contract term that they're locked into, which means they really can't investigate or pursue your service or product until that time. Maybe they just have other priorities happening. But regardless of what this situation is, the challenge becomes this: as we're reaching out to prospects and starting to build a trusted relationship, the reality is not everybody's going to be ready to buy. And the question becomes, how do I manage those people that I know are qualified? I know they're the right person. I know they could use my product or service because they already have one in place, or this is a solution that they need. But I need to keep up with them and really stay in contact with them. But if I just keep adding to my short-term prospect list, this can get out of control. And do you really want to be reaching out to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of prospects each and every week? So here's what I suggest. You develop what I call a nurture process, something that is easy for you to manage, but that in turn adds value to the prospect and keeps you top of mind. Now, there's many ways you can do this. I'll just give you some examples. Suppose that your average duration from point of contact until closure with a prospect is about a year. It's reasonable to think, therefore, it may take a couple of years, depending on if there are constraints in place, for you to really close some prospects. So what you want to do is set up some method by which you reach out on a periodic basis and add value. So let me break that down. What do I mean by periodic? Well, it depends on the length of your sales cycle. If you typically close in 3 months, you may find you pursue somebody for a few days or maybe even a couple of weeks and you give up. That nurture process, therefore, might continue on and have a check-in point every 2 to 3 weeks. Flip side, maybe your time to close is a year, 2 years. Therefore, that nurture process may be every 3 or every 6 months. So depending on how long it takes you to close, your nurture process may lengthen or shorten. But let me give you just a simple example to clarify how this would work for you. Suppose, again, your closing time is about 1 to 2 years, and you initially pursue a prospect over a period of 30 to 60 days, which is what I would suggest. If at that point you really haven't heard back from them, but you know they're alive, you know they're receiving your communication, they haven't shut you down, obviously, or maybe you have heard back and they said, now's not a great time, too busy, other priorities, etc. So we know they're alive, they're the qualified buyer, if you will, that we want to pursue, but we want to move on to other prospects to really spend most of our time focusing on them. Create something whereby you reach out maybe every quarter. If the lead time to close is 1 to 2 years, every quarter, you share something of value or interest with this person. Now, this is not a sales pitch. This is reaching out with the intent of building trust and staying top of mind. Now, there's a variety of things that you could share. It's going to depend, obviously, on what you're selling, but let me give you some examples. Maybe you send a free sample, one of your quarterly nurture process. So this isn't something you do every 3 months, but 1 month or session number 1, if you will, you send a free sample. 3 months later, comes time again to nurture them. You send them a recent report, maybe something that you drafted or pulled from online with a little handwritten note. Then 3 months later, you send them an introduction to somebody that you think could be helpful to them. Obviously not a competitor, but somebody else. Then 3 months later, you send them your annual report, new changes in the industry, new solutions to the industry, new services or products your company has launched. Then in 3 months, you send something else. So again, the idea here is this, and here is the key. It isn't as important as the frequency, is not as important as what you share. So here's this process, this nurture process put together. You pursue your prospects like you normally do. At the end of your initial outreach, it's been, again, 1 month, 2 months. It kind of depends on what your typical process is. You're thinking, okay, I know this person's alive. I know they're a qualified prospect. Maybe you've had an interaction with them. Maybe you haven't. I don't want to lose sight of them, but I want to move on and pursue other prospects. That's where the nurture process comes into place. Put these people on a list. Reach out to this list once a quarter with something that they would find of interest and of value. Now, if you're not sure what would they find of interest, ask. Take your existing clients that you've already sold to, whom know you and trust you and will be honest with you, and say, hey, if I was pursuing you and it wasn't time for you to really engage or to buy, what kind of stuff, information, tactics, strategies, introductions, tools, resources, samples, etc. might I share with you that you'd find of value? You'd be surprised what information you get, which can then form the basis of what you send out each quarter. And the good news is, because it's once a quarter, it's not a lot of time for you. You simply need to have these people on a list, block some time in your calendar to put this resource together, typically digital, and then send it out. You might also use some direct mail to get this in front of them in a different manner. I always talk about differentiation. But really the goal is to stay top of mind and add value so that when the prospect is ready to buy, when they're looking into what it is you sell, they're going to say, oh yeah, who was that person that sent me that thing last month or last quarter? You'd be surprised, especially if you mail this. I'm not suggesting you mail everything, but if you do send some via snail mail or post, you'd be surprised how many of these hang around on people's desks for a very long period of time. I actually had a client when I was early in my business. Anybody I would connect with, I still have a nurture process today, but back then I started the nurture process realizing I needed to stay in touch, but I didn't want to be assertive and to be annoying. I really just wanted to build trust. So I created a newsletter that I typed up and physically mailed. I was shocked at how many people's offices I would go into for a meeting at some point later on, and there would be the newsletter. They say, oh yeah, I love reading these. I'm like, well, I had no idea. So even if you don't get feedback, don't stop. But the goal is to stay in touch, stay top of mind, and add value. And the nurture process that you develop can do that for you. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Another one of my 10-minute sales multiplier tips based on the book, a similar name, the Sales Multiplier Formula that I released late last December. In all great book places where you'd find books, you're welcome to get a copy. If you'd like a personalized copy, you can always reach out to me. Just visit my website, ShawnCasemore.com, and we can connect there. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this. And until next time, let's get out there and go sell something. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.